One of the most historic parks in Los Angeles has been taken over by people using drugs, and it's become very unsafe, impacting the community that lives around the park. This is MacArthur Park. My guest today is John Alle, who owns property and manages property around the park area. He's here to tell us what's happening in the streets and how the gangs have been able to take over this park. He's also here to give us some solutions on how the LA can solve this. I'm Tiamat Korami. Welcome to California Insider. John, it's great to have you back on. Welcome back.
No, it's wonderful. Thanks.
You're here to tell us what's going on in a neighborhood that you have a lot of real estate in, and it's an important neighborhood for LA. Can you tell us what's going on?
Sure. I oversee about 1 million square feet in LA County, and you can always tell if a property is performing or
like
underperforming.
A commercial, right?
Commercial and residential. Residential income, apartments, commercial, retail, and industrial. And the success is usually tied to socioeconomic factors. And the success and our success as landlords and property managers is a tenant that's a partner and a business with employees that are also your partners. And if they're suffering or feel that there's a lack of safety, the property is going to suffer economically. And the opposite, when people feel happy and people feel happy shopping or walking the streets, going to the market, going home at night, getting off the bus, the community thrives. Right now, the core center of LA, MacArthur Park in the Westlake section, is failing miserably for a few reasons. Neglect, and we have an historic park that's on the National Register of Historic Places back to the 1800s. And there are gangs in the MacArthur Park area. Interestingly, 67% of the families don't have a dad. And to even complicate things more, 99% of the buildings in the Westlake area of MacArthur Park are high-rise or mid-rise apartments. And interestingly, the population is 50,000 people in 1 square mile. That's 4 times the density of Manhattan.
Wow.
So there's a lot of activity there. And it's been underfunded in our group's opinion, and the property owners we speak to and that we represent and are working with our mayor and our councilwoman to try to correct. Money spent on firefighters, equipment, police is money that is going towards prevention. And right now, LA is failing. The problems of homelessness and drugs are compounded, and the money's not going into police and fire. And it's not business as usual anymore in LA, and especially in MacArthur Park and the area around it, the businesses that have been there for years.
We've been to MacArthur Park, and we saw people are doing drugs there, a lot of drugs. And there are fires too, right?
There are fires on the sidewalk next to the buildings, on 7th, on Wilshire, on 6th, and there are fires in the park. You'll see 7 to 10 foot high bonfires. Those are usually to keep warm. And then you'll see a balance of ankle height fires that are used to cook meth. And there are, interestingly, park hours that are posted. That park is 24/7 open. And you'll find tents, you'll see...
The park hours is 24/7?
Not the stated hours, but the city has allowed the park to become a de facto shelter. It's a tough area. Criminals, to elude the police, get on the roofs and use the rooftops to escape the police. They block alleys. They make it very difficult for the city and for the local hauler there to even empty basic trash dumpsters. And some are closed, some can't be closed because the back ends of the apartments go into the alleyways. So they have to stay open. And if you drive down one side or the other, you might not get past what you find. It's very unsafe. And I've been accused, and people that are bringing this issue up have been accused because they've said, well, the people that you're referring to that are in the parks are of color, they're brown, they're black. And statistically, perhaps in MacArthur Park there are. Otherwise, there are many Caucasian Asians. And I've been accused of being racist in that regard until I tell them my real concerns to try to help and save our properties and businesses and jobs. And I tell them that my grandmother's maiden name is Jimenez. Usually stops them in their tracks.
What is there that's blocking these alleys?
People living in the alleys, people with knives, people with guns. In the last 2 weeks, we had a shooting that involved 6 people. There are 5 to 6 overdoses a day. Fire Station 11 on 7th Street. It's the smallest station, most dedicated firefighters, really good men and women. Smallest station in all of LA County, but the busiest in the country. And you can stand on a corner on Wilshire, Alvarado, 7th, and you'll see a fire truck leave there every 10 or 15 minutes. It's just very busy, and 90% of their purpose is overdose and fires, and revolving around that park.
You mentioned there are fires right next to the businesses. What are those fires for?
Those are started by homeless and drugs and cooking. The city has legalized vending, but in this area, it's all run by illegal operations and Mexican cartel. The front is fine. You'll see vegetables, you'll see toilet paper, you'll see soap.
So these are vendors that are in the street that are selling?
Blocking the entrances to the ground floors of the retail. So the retailers try to do business. They can't open their doors because you have to pass all this. So a lot of the retail ground floors are empty because the vendors take over during the day. And they take over literally. They're defecating on the curb. They're peeing. They're dumping the grease from what they're frying. The health department would not allow any restaurant to operate or cook food in that manner. And that's what's happening in the Westlake area of LA and other areas, but more prevalent here. And then behind the scenes of the carts, you'll find individual men always on the move. And they're the sidewalk landlords, and they're extorting payments from the vendors and also selling drugs. The main business, the main source of economic revenue in the Westlake area are drugs and money that goes back to the home countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico.
Now, when was it that you figured out that behind these vendors, there are people that are collecting money? How did you figure that out?
Well, I was approached as a building owner, indirect way and then in a direct way, to allow the sidewalk in front of a portion of my building to be used in exchange for money. And in one case, a threat. And I would never take money. I've never taken any money. And I will, it doesn't happen in my book. And none of my tenants are involved with that. But there are landlords and there are tenants under and absentee landlords and tenants that just put up with it, and they let it happen. And some of the retailers can't complain, because if they complain, they're threatened and their families are threatened. So we've got 67% of the population down there is illegal. That's more than any area of LA County, and it's in the top 90 percentile of the whole country in that small area of MacArthur Park, Westlake. So it's something the city really needs to take care of. And the fire issue is something we're worried about. I have been in contact with the mayor and the police chief about the problem. The day before she left for Ghana, at the behest of President Biden for the inauguration, she called me and I asked her to stay in town. I said, we've got a terrible situation here. It doesn't feel right, and I feel like the tensions are what they were during the 1992 riots, the Rodney King riots, and in the Santa Monica 2020 riots. And I said, there's a lot of tension here, and if we don't, it would be very embarrassing for our city and for you if you have to turn around and come back. If someone dies, a group of people die, there's rioters. And she went. She said, I'll only be gone 2 days. I said, no, you'll be gone more than that. And this position is a 24/7 position. You've got to be on top of things every day and all night. And what we've seen since has gotten worse.
So what kind of tension do you see? Who's the tension between who and who?
It's a very aggressive group of drug cartel members down there. And the police are reacting and not being proactive. They're not the city, they're following what they're supposed to do. They're doing a great job, but they're getting their commands from the council and chief who's appointed by the mayor. And the mayor's idea for stemming the illegal drug activity, the violence, the physical threats, the sex trade business after hours, was to put up chain link fence. Now, that's a temporary, that's like putting a Band-Aid on something when you have cancer. And the vendors didn't like it. They tried to take the fence down. It has openings at every crosswalk, parking lots it's opened, but they didn't want it because it restricted the vending. So they just simply moved across the street. So it's not solving the problem, and it's escalating the problem. And at night, sometimes the only way down Alvarado is staying on the yellow double-line median strip, because the interaction from cartel members from the building side to the park side is constant, and they know who belongs and who doesn't.
So if you're walking there or if you're driving?
You wouldn't be walking there if you wanted to live the next day. But if you're driving, you stay in the center of the street and you get out of there. And you make sure that you're not too close to the sidewalk, because people will come and break your door, break your window, or reach in and grab something. It's very violent.
The shooting you mentioned, a few days ago there was a shooting, 6 people were involved in it. Who was involved in this shooting?
A criminal element, a gang member.
They were fighting each other?
Drugs, yes. And that's what happened. And just a few hours before, our team had been at the same site and had taken a clip of a drug deal going down. And more people coming, 10, 15 people. And the next morning, I received a clip of the news. And it was the same exact wall and the same shot, same position on the sidewalk that I had gotten the night before, 4 hours earlier, 10 o'clock at night, 9:30 at night. I think the shooting occurred at 1 a.m. And I sent it to the mayor. And I said, please come down. Come with police detail. Let me drive. And let me just show you from the street what's happening in your park. And she says she travels that way to and from her home to her office. She's called me several times when she's been with Chief McDonald from the area to tell me what's going on, what their plans are. It's a bigger criminal element than anyone wishes, and probably will be dealt with on a higher level.
Our sponsor today is Shenyun. There's been some negative press on Shenyun recently. Shenyun's mission is to revive ancient and traditional Chinese culture. Shenyun Performance started by a group of Falun Gong practitioners in New York. Falun Gong is a spiritual and religious group which believes in living by truth, compassion, and tolerance, putting others first. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been persecuting it since July of 1999 in China. Since Shenyun started, CCP has been targeting it in the US and across the globe by playing different kinds of schemes to cancel the shows or impact the performance. The current negative reporting originated from some Chinese social media accounts. And we know that CCP is given a new directive to go after Shenyun and Falun Gong in the US by turning the public opinion against them. If you hear something negative on Shenyun, make sure to do your own research and your own due diligence. Despite all of CCP's campaigns against Shenyun, the show has managed to grow significantly across the world. I highly recommend you go see it. I've been going to it for the last 14 years as they change the performances every year. They're coming back to California. Make sure you go see it. Now, you mentioned the police. Have you talked to the police, and what do they think about the situation?
Police realize it's a problem. They're trying. They have experience. Some have been around since the 1992 riots. And we've explained that it's not so easy to have the fire department go and put out these fires. They need their back covered. They can be injured. They don't like going alone. But so far, from what we've been told from the rank and file brave officers on the street and the firefighters, they're not getting that protection. And the police are staying 2 and 3 blocks away from the park and reacting if there's a problem. There have been problems. I've come up to a police car, motioned to where something bad was going on that we had seen in the park. And their answer was to call 911. And some officers stationed across the street on the building side near the metro, the Alvarado Westlake station, they won't venture into the park unless it's a problem. They're letting it fester, and we've lost control to the wrong elements, to the people that don't even belong here, that aren't producing anything for their families or for the greater good for their neighbors. And they're here illegally. We have 99% of the people, of the 50,000 that live within a square mile renting. That in turn is 99, it's in the 99 percentile of the whole country. And they need those parks. Some days there's a soccer field on the northwest side of MacArthur Park, and you'll see drug deals going on the east side, and the park completely taken over. Bonfires, meth fires, drug dealing, fighting, people using the grasses, their toilet, and you'll see kids playing. It's their only outlet. They don't have anywhere to go. And the parents are there. But walking home, 86% don't have cars. So they're walking home or taking public transportation. It's unsafe. And what's more unsafe is that the streetlights are out all around the park, as far down as to where actually the mayor lives, along Wilshire. We counted the lights, we did our own survey, 49% of the streetlights are out, whether they're the decorative type that existed for over 100 years or the large, tall pole lights. And it's not strictly a copper problem, it's maintenance.
It's not the copper theft?
No, there are many light poles where the copper on the bottom is stolen and you can see it's opened. Plenty of those. This is maintenance. And our councilwoman has said, well, we'll fix it. It'll be a 2 to 3 year process because I want to go to solar generated lights. But in the meantime, we've got a whole population at risk at night.
What's the impact of that for people that are not in that area?
Safety.
Just dark. And
completely dark. Completely dark. So people don't venture out. You're not going to venture out and even go home the same way if you're on a dark street. Fortunately, a lot of the businesses have lights, or flashing lights or neon lights, but it's just not healthy for anyone to have that number of street lights out.
Now, you mentioned the fire department is they're concerned about their safety to go into this park. And what kind of calls do they get? You visited this fire department, right? This is a busy one, right? Can you tell us more about it? What kind of calls they're getting and what is it like for them to go?
Emergency calls, overdoses, fires from drugs. They tell us that the majority of one-bedroom apartments are occupied by 2 families. Children are in drawers. Babies are in drawers. Teenage kids are using closets. The average rent for a 1-bedroom is $800 to $900 a month. For a 2-bedroom, it's $1,200 to $1,400 a month. And it's just overcrowded. And interestingly, 67% of the residents stay in the area but move every 2 years. So that shows us...
In the same area?
In the same area. They're not able to continue paying their rent. They're looking for change. It's not a healthy sign. And this is the core of LA. MacArthur Park and 5th and San Julian, near Skid Row, and Santa Monica's Sangha Park are the most dangerous for drugs. Police are called to those areas 8-10 times a day. And MacArthur Park is a feeder park for 3 of Santa Monica's downtown parks. So it's affecting the beach side, west side cities. It's affecting the east side. It's affecting all of LA.
Can you explain, you said it's the feeder park, right? Can you explain what does that mean?
You can purchase, and I've been offered anything and everything, but you can purchase in bulk meth or fentanyl or a mixture and go to Santa Monica in the alleyways, the 3rd Street Promenade, Palisades Park, Songa Park, or Reed Park, and resell it and make 3 times profit. And
So people
we've been
are
told
buying
that.
from MacArthur?
Yes,
People told you?
we've interviewed people that have told us that. And if it wasn't on video, I wouldn't believe it myself. But I've talked to them, and they do what they need to do it and to satisfy the habit. They have no qualms about going in and taking what they need and walking out of any convenience store, gas station, market, you name it. So it's creating a sense of uneasiness in the city. And until we focus on law and order, and until we properly fund our fire and police, we're not going to have the safety that people feel. We're going to have an uneasiness, and that's what's happening right now in LA.
Now, do you think the police is not moving into the park? Why do you think that is?
I think they don't want to stir up a problem. There are not enough of them. It's impossible for the number of people in the park for 4 or 5 officers to make any difference.
How many people are in the park usually?
Hundreds, depending on the weather. For sure, usually 50, 60, 75 people in the park.
And what are they doing there?
Some are sleeping off their drugs. They're unconscious. Some are doing drugs. Some are acting out. Some are fighting. Some are yelling and screaming. And then there's stabbings. And there's theft among the transient addicts, among themselves. They are all armed, and they're up high, 30 hours at a time. But when they go to sleep, even amongst their so-called friends, when they wake up, something's missing. That's what they tell us. It's a very sad, endless story that we hear over and over in all the parks, from Santa Monica to MacArthur Park. But we feel if we could stem this flow of drugs from MacArthur Park and address the problem there, we would help even Skid Row. We would help Santa Monica. Addicts and dealers can get on the metro and in 20 minutes be at the last stop in Santa Monica. And in fact, the city has indicated in Santa Monica that on a daily basis, nightly basis, the last call, if they don't stay in, which a lot of them do, stay in the trains, even though they're supposed to get out, they sleep. But those that get out, sometimes there's 60, 50, 70 people exiting the train. And they go to the garages, they go to the storefronts, and they sleep, or they go to the parks. That's what they know.
What's the impact of this on your tenants and people that are doing business in that community?
It's awful because we feel our tenants are our partners. And
so who are your tenants? Is it restaurants? Is it grocery stores?
All of the above. Churches that are making an impact, not the sidewalk preacher that's holding up a sign walking down the street. There are those too. And there are organizations in the park that gather on a street corner and put out chairs. But I'm talking a concerted effort by churches to lease brick and mortar spaces, to quell the violence, to bring some stability to the area, to keep families together, parents together who are raising kids. Those are my tenants. Langer's Delicatessen, probably the most famous delicatessen in the country, is my tenant. And we both struggle. He has to close early at 4 o'clock. He can't stay open past 4 o'clock. And the minute he closes, the sidewalk is full of vendors. And at 6 a.m. the next day, he and our team are cleaning the sidewalks of filth, of grease, because during the night, we see rats going back and forth. My adjacent property owner has an historic theater building. It's been empty. He's tried hard with local and national brokerage firms himself to try to lease it. He has trouble even getting in to show it because the gangs and the vendors will not let him access his door. And he's very honest. He said, we've got a problem with rats. The alleyways are full of them. But yet, in our restaurant at Langer's, Mr. Langer is spending thousands each month for daily service so that that doesn't happen. And it's an added cost of doing business, which nobody can sustain.
So every day you guys have to clean up that street, and you're paying for that yourselves.
He's paying, and I'm paying. And it's a team effort. And the tagging that goes on, we call it tagging. It's really vandalism. And that's constant.
Is it the graffiti they come with?
And each gang has their own symbols and their own way of communicating on a wall and their own colors. And if it's not removed, then the next gang will come to say, hey, this isn't your territory, it's mine too. And there's that war that's going on. You can see the war going on every building in the MacArthur Park, Westlake area. The walls are full of graffiti, and the owners can't get to it in time. I do. Sometimes I'm out there myself, which is not wise, or I have a team that comes out and does it. But we don't want that on our building,
so
because
you paint over them.
We have to paint over, and it brings terror at night.
How often do you have to paint it?
Every other day.
So if every other day a new gang comes and puts a sign there.
The Home Depot and the Dunn Edwards and the hardware stores love property management firms and property owners right now in LA, because paint is their big seller. And it's interesting because in each of those stores, they're all locked up. So Alvarado Hardware, it's all locked up, all the paint, for obvious reasons. The wrong people are buying the paint.
The gang members are buying them and actually painting?
Yes. And some of the messages are, everyone can see and everyone knows what they mean, and they're blatant. They're blatant four-letter words, demonizing the police, public safety. They're trying to instill fear, and we've got to deal with it. The city has to deal with it. It's just getting worse. The drug issue is getting worse. There are solutions.
Now, does that happen to your church, the church that is renting from you guys too?
Yes. They have a particular color, a blue color. And I warned them, I said, if you call the city, they have a standard paint that they use. They said, no, we want blue. And every day, every morning, they're out there painting the wall. It's the cleanest wall in the area.
Every day they have to paint it?
Every day. It's so bad that the iron gates that we use for trash, opening and closing and emptying trash behind the building, it's so nasty with urine and human waste. We have to change the iron gates once a year.
Wow.
Because they rot off. They rot. And that's just a very good example. It's shocking to see what's left there.
What about other property owners? Are you talking to them? What's the experience for them?
Yes. We've banded together. We talk to each other quite a bit. Some of the property owners have major projects they would like to do that are on hold that would improve the area, more housing. It's lucrative there if the market is there and there's no crime. But if it's crime or there's a sense of crime, we're not going to see the construction that we need to house the people that need housing. So a lot of it is on hold right now.
And John, what about you? You're vocal about this, you're there, you're talking about these things, and you're actually taking action. Do you feel that this is dangerous for you?
It is dangerous, but I'm low-key. I'm respectful of all opinions, but we're persistent. And I speak to the owners in the area who look to me to put forth our solutions. But we have people in office right now, council member, a mayor, that isn't doing enough. They're spread too thin or not even paying attention. Only 20% of the people in the MacArthur Park, Westlake area voted. So that's very little. And the council member in that area doesn't reach out to constituents. To get on her calendar for a meeting or just a phone call takes an email request and a response 6 to 7 weeks after. That's not a way to run a small area and be successful. It's a tough area, but we can turn it around. It was one of the most wealthy areas near insurance companies. Today, there are 2 major law schools there nearby. You've got Southwestern University School of Law and Loyola Law School. You have they're in buildings real close. The insurance companies have moved. They've moved out to Glendale in that area, and there's a lot of vacancy, office and retail. But there are solutions, because if you look at the people that you see on the streets, some have mental health problems. They need to be dealt with. Some have alcohol and drug abuse symptoms and problems, which we see every day. Some are down on their luck. So we've selected 2 sites, and we're going to work hard to get them turned into centers that could help those that have mental health problems, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, job placement. One is right down the street at 3rd and Alvarado. It's a 5-building, 675,000 former St. Vincent Medical Hospital. When the hospital closed, the corporation that owned it sold it to the owner of the LA Times. And our Governor Newsom had proposed at one time the state or helping the county of LA buy it. And COVID came around. The owner of the LA Times said, no, I'm going to keep it in case we have overflow. It was never used for overflow. It's been empty for 4 or 5 years. It's ideal. It's got huge parking lots. We could have individual tents there. There could be outsourcing. And it's within 20 to 30 minutes of most cities at night or during the day, depending on the time of day. The other site is the Rancho Los Amigos site in Downey, 74 acres, and it's ready for tents, portable showers. It could serve all constituents, and again, is accessible within minutes, half an hour. So people would have a choice. You move out of the parks, and if you need help, here's what we can do to help you. If you need to be away from where you are now, these are 2 places you can go. The Rancho Los Amigos is an ideal site. The Mayor Karen Bass, even tweeted that that site could be up and running in 3 days with portable potties, showers, tents, food, and we could get the people off the streets and not use our parks as shelters. That's what we need. We need to focus on those 2 sites. They're here, they're obvious, and if they're privately owned, which Rancho Los Amigos is not, it's owned by the county. The site at 3rd and Alvarado is privately owned. The owner could be compensated by the county or state, but we need that land. It's ready to go.
Now, do you think if these 2 sites come up and people are the homeless, the addiction, and people that are doing drugs there, they move away out of the park, how much of them do you think will go away because they're tied to that?
I think those 2 sites would help the people that are seeking help. I think the people that are dealing drugs and using drugs, stealing, and involved with the sex trade, they're going to continue. And we need to be firm, and we need to get them off the streets. It's not permissible, it's not sane for anyone to keep them in the parks or even on the streets. They need to be arrested and moved out. And if they want to participate later in a diversion program and they can show that they're worthy of that, that should be considered. But the majority of the people in the parks are repeat offenders. They're criminals. They've come back because that's what they know. They've been released and they come back to what they know. They've been released with $50, $75, enough medicine to handle them, and the people will go back to what they know best.
How did you figure out that part?
Speaking with law enforcement and FBI people that are dealing with this.
So they're saying the majority of the people that are in the park that are ex-offenders, right?
Correct. And that's not promoting safety. It's not upholding our laws, what we stand for in the city and county and our country.
So essentially what you're saying is that this area is being left alone for people to come do whatever they want.
It's being left alone, and it's even, I think, some on the city council view it as a way to clean the sidewalks, as they say, clean them, rid the sidewalks of people, the tents, Well, it's not ridding the sidewalks of the tents. You can drive down any of those streets and the tents and the people laying on the sidewalk are still there. What it's doing is just making the parks more dangerous because that's where they can deal and use drugs without any consequence and without any view from police. The police will not go in there at night unless there's a murder or an emergency or an out-of-control fire.
Can you tell us more about that area? That area's past. You said
Sure.
This is a historical park.
Sure. It's a park that is close to my family home, and my grandfather used to walk in that park. It's always had its history of ups and downs. I remember there was a city council member 20 years ago that was arrested there and had to resign for buying drugs. So it's always been known. It's never been protected. It's never been revered like it should be. I would ask all Angelenos, wherever they live, to make sure and demand transparency and accountability for every dollar and every grant that the city gives to a nonprofit. There are so many nonprofits in LA that are receiving huge amounts of grant money. We see it in Santa Monica, and they can't account for millions of it. We have another problem in MacArthur Park, and we have a county health board. Public health is distributing an authorized distribution of needles, meth pipes, condoms, and Narcan. We're fine with the Narcan. We're fine with the counseling. There's no counseling going on in those parks, I can guarantee you. But they are distributing needles because they feel that it will stem disease and the spread of disease. What's happening is the addicts are sharing the same needle, using the extra needle to buy extra drugs. And
So they're going and selling the other needle?
yes, or trading it for drugs. Our mayor and our police chief have been emphatic in their opposition to that program. Absolutely emphatic. And I've asked them, is this for public? Can I tell this to the public? And they said, please do. We're against that needle distribution program, whether it's in Santa Monica, because it affects us here in LA, Sherman Oaks, and Santa Monica is bordered by LA on three fronts. And to have that in the park is awful, MacArthur Park, and especially when our county health director in the department has also said there are no statistics showing that it works. There weren't any when they started the program, yet the budget has grown threefold. So it's continuing. And only the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors can stop it and can fire her or tell her to stop that program. And until they do, it's going to grow and it's creating problems. We tested it out ourselves. We were offered free needles. So it's very easy. And it's the wrong thing to do in a community.
John Alle, co-founder of Santa Monica Coalition Project of Safe Cities. It was great to have you in California Insider.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Let us know your thoughts on what's going on in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. And let us know if you agree with John Alle, our guest, on his solutions to homelessness in that area. You can always reach out to me by emailing siamak@californiainsider.com or commenting on these videos. We always read all of your comments and emails. We'll see you next time.